Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm privileged to welcome not just a dear friend and someone who I hold in high regard, but a person who has been a serial entrepreneur and has taught at various colleges and institutions around the world. Ram Subramaniam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
Ram is the co-founder of My Money Karma. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's just completed his PhD in entrepreneurship. So Ram, tell me, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
Wow, that was a generous introduction, Ashutosh. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
But I would like to add a caveat to it that luck and randomness played a crucial role in all these things.
Wonderful.
So, in the interest of full disclosure, let's put it out there. You were talking about milestones. I consider milestones to be achievements. So in my case, I'm going to call them pivotal moments or events because I didn't achieve any of this. First, I was born into an environment that taught Bhagavad Gita and Thirukkural, a Tamil literary masterpiece early on in my life. Thirukkural was held even in higher esteem in this environment because it didn't have a religious connotation to it. It addressed social issues and more importantly, it discussed the ephemeral nature of life itself.
Okay.
My high school teachers cared more about my future than even I did. And I think it was Carl Jung, the Swiss anthropologist, who once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And this environment really helped me with that. I'm so grateful I was born in this environment because I can't imagine how I would have turned out had I been born in, let's say, Pyongyang in North Korea. The second one was I was doing my undergrad engineering in PSG Tech, a pretty reputed college in Coimbatore, well known both in India and outside India. I was doing my fourth year engineering. That's when I realized I'm not going to make a good engineer. Surprise, surprise. So I was looking into other potential possibilities as I was investigating what I should do for a living. We had a course in computer programming in the fourth year, not a full course, half a course, and they taught us Fortran programming, and I fell in love with it.
Okay.
To my utter surprise, I started going to the library and started reading books on programming. I learned a couple of programming languages. During the final year, the PSG Tech alumni from the United States sent 2 Apple Macintosh computers. So I had an opportunity to practice a little bit of programming. And when I graduated, I decided to become a full-time computer programmer. I gave up an engineering opportunity, took a lower salary, moved to a more expensive city. The situation was so bad that during month ends, I had to borrow money from my classmates to pay the rent. I had to thank my classmates there. But I'm so happy I did because today, going to work is like going on a picnic for me.
Right.
I don't know where my job begins and joy begins. Job and joy, everything is the same for me.
Fantastic.
So happy I did it.
Okay.
The third one was, I was working in Florida. I was in my early 30s. I had just gotten married at that time. I was working for a company. Everybody liked me. I liked the people I worked with. I was traveling a lot to South America, Caribbean, Europe. I really enjoyed my job. But then I wanted to try out entrepreneurship. And my wife was okay with it. I went and launched my first venture. I was surprised that it succeeded. So as you could see, in all these instances, luck and randomness played an important role. I don't think I can claim that I achieved all these things because I'm not one of those super duper intelligent guys. I was not a topper in the class. If anything, my goal was not to be in the bottom.
Well done. Well said. But I'm sure you also heard the other line, which says that the person who wins the Sword of Honor doesn't become the chief of army staff, and the guy who tops in business school doesn't become the chairman of a company, So,
very true, very true.
So Ram, let's talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. You built businesses, you've exited from businesses, you're now in a very exciting business. Tell me about your entrepreneurial journey.
Surprisingly, my entrepreneurial journey has been pretty smooth, not too many ups and downs. I guess, again, I got very lucky and fortunate there. I never thought that entrepreneurial journey is an exercise in self-discovery. That was a surprise to me. It highlighted my abilities, my inabilities, my shortcomings. It also highlighted my biases, my presumptions, my areas that I need to improve, and how I communicated with people, how I communicated with fellow founders, employees, and so on and so forth. And sometimes I felt that the decisions I made were a representation of who I am as an individual.
Correct.
They were a reflection of my own character. So when situations arose where I had to change directions in the company, I was able to reflect on my own decision-making skills. So at the end of the day, I was able to understand a little bit more about me. And I'm so happy that this entrepreneurial journey helped me in that.
Okay.
I had an opportunity to work with investors, work with young people, work with old guys. I had to work with people who I disagree with. And more importantly, as a tech founder, I had to be hands-on. In any technology company, one of the founders had to be a tech founder.
Wonderful.
And I happened to be the tech founder, and I was very hands-on. And you have written books. The buck stops here is a book you wrote. You have written 5 books in management. I don't think I have read a total of 5 books in my life.
Thank you.
But the buck stops here says, as a founder, I have nobody else to point my fingers at. I am responsible at the end of the day, and the buck stops with me.
Correct. Well said. Well said. So tell me a little bit about your latest venture, My Money Karma.
So My Money Karma was a product of, or is a product of, what I and one of my Stanford classmates decided to do one day, sitting in a canteen in Stanford Business School. He had financial experience in India. I had the technology experience, even though I am also an options trader. So as we were thinking about the potential in India, we realized that fintech is an opportunity for us to do good and do well, because banks were under the impression that their business models are never going to change.
Okay.
In fact, Warren Buffett, who's well known for investing in banks because those business models don't change. Warren Buffett doesn't like change much. That's why he doesn't even invest in tech companies until recently.
Correct.
So we realized that banks are not immune to change, and that the change is coming from all directions.
Right.
So we found that we can marry the technology experience of mine and my co-founders' financial experience, and then deliver a good product and a set of services to consumers in India.
Right.
And that's how the fintech company My Money Karma was born, and we are headquartered in Hyderabad.
Fantastic. So let's move on, Ram. And you've just finished your doctoral degree in entrepreneurship. Tell me, what is the hypothesis that you were working on?
The genesis of my doctoral research was, I don't know if you remember, you and I were working together at one IIM to put together an incubation center. I was working with a lot of incubation centers, both in the United States and in India. What I observed was the IT founders and IT entrepreneurs had specific advantages because the ecosystem of an IT entrepreneur is much different from that of a non-IT entrepreneur.
Correct.
I observed that the stigma of failure is lower for IT entrepreneurs, and opportunity cost is much higher for an IT entrepreneur. And the technology evolution is also much higher for IT entrepreneurs, whereas for a non-IT entrepreneurs, so many technologies are stagnant.
Okay.
So the differences in ecosystems between the IT entrepreneurs and non-IT ones, I was curious to know whether it influences them in the decision making differently,
Okay.
and whether they might or they could reattempt venture launching at different rates after failing. So I wanted to investigate it, and as a practicing entrepreneur, it was a little easier for me to form this hypothesis. Moreover, I was very curious. I wanted to really get an answer to this. And if you want to know the answer to the question, it is that IT entrepreneurs are more likely to retry entrepreneurship after failing than non-IT ones. And there were also some surprises. I was under the impression that funding availability may be more for IT entrepreneurs than for non-IT ones, and that didn't pan out.
Fantastic. So, every time I've had a long conversation with you, I've always heard you talk very passionately about the CEO of 2030. And I know you do a lot of work on this and talk at several management schools about this. What are your thoughts on what should the qualities of a CEO be in 2030?
Actually, I'll give you a little bit history into how this course even came into existence.
Okay.
I was in 2009, 2010. I was attending a conference in San Francisco of CEOs, in which many CEOs from India were visiting, and some of the CEOs in India said at that time, now that the US companies were selling at 50-60% discount, their problem was, even though they could acquire those firms, they were not able to find Indian CEOs to run those companies.
Okay.
And that was a big surprise to me, because we have these reputed business schools in India. And unfortunately, here are these businessmen in India feeling that there is no enough talent in India to run these companies. So as I started investigating, as I started working with some of the professors, that's when I realized that a special, specific training targeting students, preparing them to be future CEOs, was really lacking in India. So I put together content for that. I spoke to several CEOs, and what I found was very interesting. I composed or I compiled the content of my interviews with the CEOs and added my own content. And what happened was, one, the business models are changing is an understatement. Business models have always been changing. The problem is, new models are created more rapidly and destroyed more rapidly. So, and the demarcation between established firms and startups in terms of how companies need to be run, that is slowly disappearing. Okay. The established organizations, including banks, cannot sit on their laurels and then say, okay, our business model is not going to change, because their business model is also going to change. And then there is this new business model that is evolving here in the United States. I don't think it's there in Asia yet. They're called SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies. SPACs are, those are shell companies. They don't have any operations yet. But the investors pump money into SPACs under the assumption that the SPAC founders will one day find companies to acquire and take them public.
Okay.
Now, this model has been there for about 15 years in the United States now, but then recently, what has happened is the SPACs are absorbing an enormous amount of funding from various sources because of the liquidity in the market. So, if you were to look at what skills might be required in the future for potential CEOs of global conglomerates, one is the CEOs have to go on an acquisition spree. The current situation is either acquire or get acquired, because there is enough money in the marketplace and the companies available are limited in number. So everybody wants to go on for an acquisition.
Correct.
So yes, running an organization is fine, but focusing solely on organic growth and ignoring acquisition is not a good idea for the CEOs. The other important aspect of the CEOs are companies have, in this global environment, the CEOs have to be politically savvy also.
Okay.
Dealing with the governments of China, dealing with the governments in the United States, it's not that one government policy stays even when the government changes. The policies dramatically change when governments change. So the CEOs have to be politically savvy. And more importantly, the CEOs have to know how to engage the millennials. Their mindset, their attitudes, their expectations, their work ethics, they are all completely different. In fact, I believe that their work ethics are far better than the current generation's work ethics. So these are some of the things I address in the class.
Fantastic. And, based on, again, all the research that you have done and all the programs that you are running for the CEO of 2030, what, in your opinion, are some of the key qualities a CEO needs to have?
One, he or she needs to be bold.
Okay.
They can never be scared. Two, there are crucial decisions they have to make. For instance, if you are the CEO of Pepsi, you better be open to pushing high sugar, high salt, high calorie, low priced sugar water to kids. Because you must learn to balance the interests of your investors, your employees, your suppliers, and your customers.
Correct.
And that is not easy. Previously, that was pretty straightforward. Today, the investors are pushing the CEOs from one direction. Then they have this active consumers around the world. They say, no, this is not acceptable. And then you have to satisfy the needs of various other lobbies. So it's becoming a balancing game. So the CEOs need to be, one, very communicative.
Okay.
And two, the CEOs have to be very clear in their minds as to whether the decisions they make are compatible with their values. If not, they just have to get out of there, because they are answerable not just to the investors, but to the employees, but to the customers.
Agree.
And also to the activists. There are activists today who are overseeing these companies from a distance and then saying what is acceptable and what is not.
Very interesting. So one more question for you before I move to some personal questions. You have, as someone who has taught so many students over the years, and now, of course, the world belongs to the millennials and the Gen Zs. What is your view or impression of millennials and the Gen Zs in the world of technology and entrepreneurship?
One, they adapt faster than others.
Correct.
Because they have been born and brought up in this rapidly changing environment.
Correct.
Their understanding of what change is much different from our understanding of what change is. The second one is they are used to this model of Uber and Uber Eats and these kind of things. They don't believe in investing in capital equipment. The cloud computing has told them you don't need hardware. You just rent space somewhere. So they are very comfortable with that setting. And they are not looking for a long-term relationships in employments. That is something that is surprising to me, because their behavior in consuming products seem to be carried forward to their behavior in the office. They don't see anything long-term. And they are impatient, because they are used to getting things done in the press of a button. They are used to getting things delivered, services delivered. So there is not much planning needed. There is not much planning going on, and they are not planning much. So they are looking at short-term returns. Rightfully or wrongfully, that's the way the world is going, and that's the way things are working today.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So Ram, I'm going to now move to some questions for you personally. I think I have time for maybe 3 or 4 questions. My first question is for someone who has achieved so much in academics, someone who has achieved so much as an entrepreneur personally. What does success mean to Ram?
Well, actually, nothing. I'm sorry to pull philosophy on you. The reason being, I know there is a quote in Bhagavad Gita. There is a statement in Bhagavad Gita that says, Karmanya eva adhigaraste ma paleshu kadachana. What it means is just do your job. don't worry about the consequences. Okay. So I am a strict follower of some of these verses in Bhagavad Gita. So
Okay.
I can differentiate between success and failure.
Okay.
Success and failures, I view them as mere consequences of one's hard work. So if I am not to worry about failure, I shouldn't be celebrating success. I view success or failure more through the lens of how it's going to impact my employees.
Okay. And a follow-up question to that is that, you keep doing so many different things. Where do you keep getting your inspiration from?
Oh, people around me, my classmates' children, and my dad, who's an 80-year-old guy. I call him whenever I have doubts in Sanskrit or English or in Malayalam. He can help me all that. Or my 18-year-old daughter. I have access to people from 18 to 80.
Wonderful.
And what I have realized is this, whether it is my college professors, whether it is my employees, ex-employees, other founders, classmates, kids, I can always pick up a phone and then call them. The way they help me out, the way they are enthusiastic in contributing, tells me that these people seem to like me even though they know me. That is what is a surprise.
Okay. Well said. So my next question to you is that if you, Ram, were a role model to millions of children who closely followed you and your life choices, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
One, I would have learned to quantify risk far earlier in life.
Okay.
And that is something that I am trying to inculcate in the minds of young people today. Not to be afraid of risk before you move away from risk. First quantify it, investigate it, understand it fully.
Okay.
And then you decide whether you want to take that risk or not.
Okay.
The second one is, you are what your environment is. I am a product of the environment that I was born into. But the problem is, if you are born into an environment where you are not given enough information, you must know this well in advance and you need to do something about it and change it.
Okay.
So it is about introspecting, looking at the environment, looking around, and then saying, can I move to a better environment? Today with the internet, that is easily done virtually.
Well said. So I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is on failure. And, I have a new book coming out on failure and, everyone fails, but in South Asia particularly, we don't teach our children it's okay to fail. But we keep failing. What have been some of your learnings from some of your biggest mistakes or failures?
Oh, you want to talk about my failure? How much time do you have?
We all have lots of time.
Okay, so what I have learned is this. Again, this is a quote from Bhagavad Gita. Okay. There is a statement in Bhagavad Gita that says, Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhudva Samadvam Yoga Uchyate. What it means is, success or failure, treat them equal.
Okay.
That mindset is called yoga. Yoga is not just physical, it's also a mindset.
Correct.
So when I look at failure, I have failed in one or a couple of instances. So when I look at failure, the first thing that comes to my mind is, how is this going to affect my employees? What am I going to tell my employees about how they are related to this failure? First I tell them is, okay, everything is on me. You guys have been exceptionally good. So if things don't work, it is my responsibility. I think Daniel Kahneman, a psychologist who won even a Nobel Prize in finance, he said, we as human beings attribute our failures to external forces, but our successes to our talent.
Okay.
So I am aware of it. So the first thing I do is, don't attribute external forces to failure. I must accept responsibility. Because if I don't, I am not going to introspect or investigate why things happen and how not to repeat it.
Right.
And there is no point in, sitting in a corner and crying about it. Because any entrepreneur should know 70 to 75% of ventures would fail in the first 7 years.
Right.
So that is why when my first venture succeeded, I was surprised.
Wonderful. Ram, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you and everything else that you're doing lots of success.
Thank you, sir. I admire you a lot, and this was a learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.